Welcome back to Close Up. Also running for the NHGOP chairmanship is a longtime Republican activist, recent candidate for state senate, and a well-known Seacoast businessman, Lou Gargiulo, who joins us in studio this morning. Thanks for being here, Mr. Gargiulo.
Thank you, Adam. Happy to be here with you.
So you've been involved in Republican politics going way back, all the way to the good old days of the 80s and early 90s. I'm just curious, how do you get back to a piece of that, at least, and start winning federal races again?
I think by selecting the right candidates and encouraging people to run. I think by having a better set of messaging, and I think by working very hard. We must work hard to convince people that we're the party of prosperity, we're the party of freedom, and we're the people who can keep the New Hampshire advantage and the American dream alive. And that's all of what my interest is, to do that for our children and grandchildren.
Everybody thought in 2022 the Republicans had a great chance of picking up that first congressional district seat and also the Senate seat held by Maggie Hassan. Didn't happen, and those candidates that the Republicans put up ended up losing by more than people thought they did. What happened?
Well, there was a tremendous amount of money spent by the Democrats. When you consider in the Senate race, it was probably 30 or 40 to 1. And if you have candidates who are underspent, who've worked really hard, but they did not have the kind of funding necessary to be able to get their message out at the level they needed to. And I think there were issues with the messaging, and I think all of those things could have been done better. And I think that in the future we will do it better. I'm convinced of that. I think we learned a great deal. I don't think anybody should think any election is going to be a shoo-in. It's going to be a red wave. I think that's an error in judgment to even tout that, and we saw what it accomplished. And I think we're at a place right now to change that.
What do you say to the idea that the party needs to find candidates who aren't quite as extreme, who might be more in the mold of Governor Chris Sununu, who's won repeatedly at the statewide level?
I think the party needs to recognize what the electorate is today, and I think that people who run have to recognize what the people of New Hampshire are looking for, and those candidates are the ones who should come forward and run for elected office. But we're not going to restrict people or discourage people. Everybody has a right to participate in the process, and those who will get through the primaries will be our candidates, and hopefully it'll be candidates who can win in the general election.
You've earned Governor Chris Sununu's endorsement. Do you think that'll help you with the rank and file in the party as you try to make up a deficit? Because it looks like your opponent, Mr. Ager, has locked down a lot of support already.
Well, I don't know how many votes he truly has locked down. It's easy to say, and I know how many votes I believe we have at this point. We have a very strong effort going on, and I think that it'll be very close. So I think getting the governor's endorsement certainly is good, but I've gotten a lot of other people's endorsements, including Caroline Levitt, who was a superstar, a rock star for the party, and getting that I think is also a coup. And I'm happy to have any and everyone's endorsement from across the party, and I think that's happening in rare form.
Sununu's a big name. I want to talk about a bigger name. That's Trump. You were a supporter of President Donald Trump from the very beginning, back in 2015 and 16, a co-chair of his presidential campaign. Is Mr. Trump still the future of the Republican Party?
I think that's up to the people to decide. President Trump did some remarkable things. Our economy was far better than it's been in a very long time, and I think people will make a quantitative evaluation based on what's happened during that period and what's happened over the past 2 years. And the electorate will decide, and I stand with the electorate.
We don't know who the nominee for president will be for the GOP. What is a winning message for Republicans in 2024?
I think clearly it's prosperity. I think it's a strong military. I think it's still regaining our place as a world power. And I think we have to be out there up front spelling out the message. Having heating oil prices where they are and the cost of food all speaks to a very poor economy and a very poor state of affairs. And we'll have a lot to run on in 2 years, and I feel very confident that we can produce some pretty good results.
Seemingly the eternal question for NHG chairmen and chairwomen has been, where's the money going to come from? How do you fix fundraising for your party?
Well, I think clearly the fundraising has to be a universal effort by a lot of people. And I propose certainly a robust fundraising effort in state. And as a business person, I know a lot of people, and those people all, in many cases, feel as I do. They don't want a sales tax. They don't want an income tax. They don't want an estate tax. And if the Democrats take a solid control of the governor's office or the legislature, that's a real possibility. And I think a lot of in-state people will invest in not having that happen. I also think a lot of out-of-state people recognize that a U.S. Senate seat or a congressional seat here is easier to win, and having people who are sympathetic to the message in supporting the economic and prosperity message is people who will invest in. And I will go across the country, I will go across the state, and I will do everything in my power to raise the kind of monies necessary to ensure that our candidates can win.
I want to ask you quickly about the state Senate race we mentioned earlier. You ran in a blue district, an uphill battle against the candidate who eventually won. You asked for a recount and you wanted to examine closely every absentee ballot. What was that all about?
The absentee ballots were certainly a concern to our team. We're going to be making a report to the Ballot Law Commission, I believe, in March, and we're going to present our findings. And our interest in the recount was not to change the result, but was to set aside all of the issues of concern that the electorate has. And after 2020 and even 2022, a lot of people have questions about the integrity. And being able to review 30-some-odd thousand ballots gave us new insight into it. And I think that there isn't a red herring that's going to come out of it, but I think there's going to be a lot of constructive improvements that both sides of the aisle can embrace in an effort to make sure that people feel confident that their ballot is being properly counted and that there's no room for any sort of mischief.
It was a fair election, though.
It was a fair election.
Okay. All right. Lou Gargiulo, candidate for NHGOP chairman. We appreciate your time here on Close Up.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.